involving and working with young people in trade union work is a viable recipe for the future. Youth collaboration with the more experienced members of the union is a plus, and this will create possibilities of continuity and stability. In trade unions, young members can communicate more effectively with their peers about the nature and the mission of their union. They can serve as useful mobilization and effective recruitment instruments. They can also be able to understand the issues and problems their peers encounter in the labor market, and together with experienced members, they can find possible solutions. Thus, youth involvement in trade union work will make the union more dynamic, both in ideas as well as activities. This can be reinforced by empowering them and preparing them for leadership roles. Mr. Chairman, delegates, distinguished guests, the most vibrant pillar of any organization, but most times remain in the shadows, are women members. The labor market and labor-related issues can be said to be the most oppressive for women. The general notion that the natural difference between men and women should determine the work they participate in is completely outdated. The work done by women at home is perceived as natural, and therefore privileged to be invited as the guest speaker for this very important occasion. GTU had prepared me for so many years. GTU had exposed me or given me exposure nationally and internationally for many years. 30 to 40% of people who know me in this country know me because of GTU. Therefore, even at midnight, even at the 11th hour, if I am called to carry out a service for GTU, it is an obligation. Mr. Chairman, may I also again recognize the presence of very distinguished persons here, that of Yahar Jallo and Sajah Sane, who were colleagues. I worked with them in the 80s, 90s to bring this union at least somewhere it should be. We also have in our midst a very pragmatic, a very strong, quiet, but somebody whom I had always admired. I've worked with him just for a few years, and that is Mr. Sisao, who was one time Deputy Permanent Secretary at the Ministry of Health. And I'm not surprised that he has been elevated to his present position. Mr. Sisao, we recognize you. I also recognize the presence of representatives of the various security services, and I think this is a very good cooperation between GTU and the security services. I could also see the Director General of the Gambia Library Authority, Services Authority, the representatives of the Gambia College, the Deputy Mayor of Banjul City Council, the Chairman of EFANET, the Director of this Region 1, Mr. Saidi, Ustaz Bajan, whom I respect very much, very truthful man, and all other protocols observed, because there are many distinguished persons here, and delegates. But, Mr. Chair, if you could allow me to make reference to 5 points outside my speech. Number one, I want to commend GTU for respecting the GTU Constitution and making sure that this midterm Congress takes place. Constitutions are formulated by members, by people, and once they are formulated, they must be respected to the letter and the spirit. And that you are doing that, I encourage you to continue that. 2, it has been mentioned by the President of the Union, Mr. Gomez, of some of the things or some of the developments made by GTU. And I could remember, I always trying to bring this story because it's a motivator. In 2000, I think it was in 2000 or 1999, when I assumed office as president of this union, I was home and listening to one radio program. It was a children's program on Radio Gambia. And one of the children, I think the animator was asking them what professions they would want to join when they leave school. And then this child said she does not want to be a teacher because teachers don't have vehicles. Let me say it in all of it, makes more sense. Teacher amuñ moto. I was slightly offended because I am a teacher, but I felt there was sense in what this child was saying. The fact of the matter was not the motto. The fact of the matter was that the working conditions of teachers were just too bad, and that it needed to be improved. 20 years or less than 20 years, I think I can now respond to that child. The matter has changed. I think we can see teachers now in cars, in motorbicycles. Maybe the next thing we aspire for is a helicopter. The third thing is the image of the organization, nationally and internationally. I think we have maintained this image. If you go outside and talk to our colleagues, they almost always make reference to the Gambia. I want to encourage the union to ensure that we don't miss that out. Let us strengthen that. The fourth point, Mr. Keba Sise was here, and he was talking about this trade union bureau. I must commend the unions in this country for coming together. I think this should be the strength of unions in this country. Coming together and having this bureau and moving forward, I wish to commend you on that. And finally, I would want to challenge the president of this union and the general secretary, as well as the executive committee, that one of the clauses of the Gambia Teachers Union, if I could remember, was that 1/3 of the membership of any committee in this union should be women. And I think that needs to be respected. When the board for the credit union was called, I could not see even a single woman. So I challenge you to make sure that you work towards that. Mr. Chairman, History testifies that trade unions have, over the period, emerged as mouthpiece of workers worldwide. Organized labor has become a protective gear for workers, in the absence of which workers would have been borne the brunt of exploitation by unsympathetic employers. Workers got united to stand up and protect and promote their common interests, take collective actions, make demands from their employers, and stood up for their rights. These are the ideals of a functional trade union. It is therefore not a crime if any organized labor stands up to ask for what is due to them. Mr. Chairman, rethinking youth and women engagement in union work with specific reference to GTU is an apt theme to deliberate on. Youth and women in trade union organizations form the strongest of the pillars. However, their engagement in union activism leaves much to be desired. If unions are to progress, these segments of the membership, that is youth and women, must be fully involved by way of providing them with the requisite space to act. Over the years, the Gambia Teachers Union had made giant strides in engaging youth and women in its core operations, even though there is still much to do. The creation of a status of women committee with a program officer was a first step in empowering women members. The challenge now for GTU is to provide another first step by creating a youth wing to respond to the specific needs of this group. Youth can be a vibrant and radical force in trade union movements. They can be effective change agents, bringing in new ideas and vigor as they are activity-oriented. Unions, therefore, have an obligation to engage, to nurture, to give trade union education and build their confidence. They need to be given space to participate in decision-making processes as well as leadership roles. This will help bring out their creative potentials for the benefit of the union. GTU is blessed with a youthful membership and therefore must engage in programs and activities that would attract their involvement. Trade unions must engage young people in the non-formal sector to be unionized in order to benefit from union protection. These people, that is these youths in the non-formal area, work long hours in hard conditions and for meager salaries, unsafe and harmful working environment, working without contract agreements, or even with contract agreements that have legal clauses that would confine them to that job irrespective of poor working conditions. Mr. Chairman, trade unions must reach out to the young people in both formal and non-formal employments to build awareness and eventually bring them to the fold. Involving and working with young people in trade union work is a viable recipe for the future. Youth collaboration with the more experienced members of the union is a plus, and this will create possibilities of continuity and stability. In trade unions, young members can communicate more effectively with their peers about the nature and the mission of their union. They can serve as useful mobilization and effective recruitment instruments. They can also be able to understand the issues and problems their peers encounter in the labor market, and together with experienced members, they can find possible solutions. Thus, youth involvement in trade union work will make the union more dynamic, both in ideas as well as activities. This can be reinforced by empowering them and preparing them for leadership roles. Mr. Chairman, delegates, distinguished guests, the most vibrant pillar of any organization, but most times remain in the shadows, are women members. The labor market and labor-related issues can be said to be the most oppressive for women. The general notion that the natural difference between men and women should determine the work they participate in is completely outdated. The work done by women at home is perceived as natural and therefore not valued by men and society. Therefore, women are marginalized by these perceived structures. At workplaces, they earn less and not frequently promoted, even whereas they may perform better than men. The benefits of involving women in trade union work are enormous. Women groups in unions can be effective mobilizing and unifying forces. However, they are yet to be given the requisite space to manifest their potentials to the fullest. It is observed that businesses and organizations with more women in top leadership positions enjoy stronger financial performance and efficient program implementation. Women face challenges which impinge on their participation. These include cultural norms, that is, lack of a voice. They are to be seen and not to be heard. Domestic pressures, that is, house chores, the family responsibilities, and also the social handicaps, that is the low literacy level of women, as well as awareness and confidence to pursue their rights. Ladies and gentlemen, here are some interesting revelations which should alert trade union organizations to be more proactive in the fight for women emancipation. It has been observed from a World Bank report that women labor force participation has stagnated and even decreasing over the years. That women on average earn 10 to 30% less than working men. That women are half as likely as men to have full-time wage employment. That women spend at least twice as much as men on unpaid domestic work. That at least 1 in 3 women have experienced one form of physical or sexual violence or another. Thus, the above should prompt women to be engaged in union work in order to fight these vices. They should be supported and be provided with flexible options for participation. Trade unions have potential to empower women, for they are formed primarily on the common values of fighting workers' rights. Unions have to represent the interests of all workers, particularly women. They must endeavor to break the cultural barriers that continue to relegate women to almost second-rate citizens. Women committees need be set in unions to promote gender programs, and these programs must be integrated into union programs. Unions should formulate gender-sensitive collective bargaining instruments for advocacy at union level and at workplaces. Mr. Chairman, women need to fight to end the unchallenged men dominance in our unions. A balance in numbers or an acceptable percentage of parity can be the first step to close the gap. Women must endeavor to develop organizational, assertive, negotiating, and advocacy skills that would bring them to the forefront for any collective bargaining process. Unions should support women to broaden their advocacy teams and concerns and assume central roles in the unions to enable them push forward their agenda. There is much talk about gender equality, but it must not only stop at participation. It should be extended to health issues, to environmental issues, to security issues, to political issues, to economic issues, etc., etc. These are areas that unions tend to either avoid or neglect in their advocacies. Women trade unionists should be made to reach out and activate the struggle to wider boundaries. This will be a tough endeavor, particularly in Africa, where employers and governments sometimes become oversensitive and suspicious to the existence of strong and powerful unions. But the fact is, unions are there to support the employers as well as government for progress. The response to this hurdle, however, is determination and strong sense of awareness on the part of unions. The struggle for women empowerment and emancipation must be top priority for trade union organizations. This must not stop at workplaces, at homes or communities, but must be extended to our own trade unions and governments. Mr. Chairman, distinguished persons, in conclusion, I challenge women unionists to not only engage in social and entertainment activities, but to demonstrate real and meaningful union activism. You cannot continue to be electors. You must aspire to be elected to positions of authority. You must propagate to fight for your rights and entitlements. Do not take a back seat and expect others to fight for you. You are intelligent, industrious, resourceful, thoughtful, charismatic, and caring. Thus, you have greater qualities than men to advocate for and bring results to the unions. I call on you to come out from your shells and be heard. I equally challenge unions to open the gates wide enough for women and youth involvement and participation. Mr. Chairman, I want to end up with this statement. The power and quality of a union is determined by the quality of its youth and women members. Thank you very much.
We know that success is not a destination, but a journey, believing in the philosophy that victory belongs to the most persevering. While thanking the Almighty for his countless blessings, I'm here to spell out words of thanks to all those who made this year's midterm review a sweet memory to carry home. Gratitude is not only the greatest virtue, but the parent of all the others. Honorable Chief Guest of the function, Mr. Omar Njendur, ex-president of the Gambia Teachers Union, permanent secretary in the person of Sisao, Mr. Sisao, Office of the President, national executive members, person present, security chiefs being represented, and other dignitaries present here, dear loving teachers and well-wishers. We deem it our proud privilege to stand before you to place on record the contribution of every noble heart towards the success of today's event. We raise our hearts in gratitude and thank the Almighty for blessing us all with this delightful morning. We wish to express our gratitude to Mr. Kewa Sise for being with us since the onset. We want to tell you that your presence and the gentle words of appreciation is a source of encouragement for all of us. Thank you, dear brother, for championing the leadership of the first ever trade union bureau in the Gambia. From the depth of our hearts, we thank once again our guest of honor, Mr. Omar Njendur, for all the words of wisdom that radiated a source of energy within us. Despite of the short notice, he was able to make it up to this gathering and gave a wonderful speech. We will ever remain grateful to you, and we thank you for being with us today. We place on record the goodness of our dignitaries from various institutions, media houses, partners, and esteemed friends of GTU for your silent support and unspoken words of encouragement. With deep sense of appreciation, we recall the efforts of our dear loving teachers. Your days of hard work did bear much fruit today. We thank you wholeheartedly for your stewardship. Keep the flag of GTU high. I must mention our deep sense of appreciation to all our Secretariat staff of GTU and GTU CCU for their involvement and willingness to take on the completion of tasks beyond their comfort zones. Our sincere thanks to the Congress tax team for their diligent service and commitment to the core values of Gambia Teachers Union. Your untiring efforts added color and festivity to this 2017 Midterm Review Congress. And finally, thankfulness is the beginning of gratitude, and gratitude is the completion of thankfulness. Yes, once again, we thank each and every one present here, and to all our collaborators, parents and teachers, for your commitment and cooperation towards the building up of this great union of ours. May God continue to bless us all. Thank you.
By the rest of all. I learned a lesson from St. Peter's, where
from the ashes of the old, for the union makes us strong. Solidarity forever, solidarity forever, solidarity forever.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.